Several states have recently been passing these new laws that would make them effectively Second Amendment sanctuary states. They're saying that federal law has no authority over these states and that state law will prevail. They're doing this in response to an administration that is openly hostile to guns. Now, just because Joe Biden doesn't know what day it is or how to spell his own name anymore, and yes, I mean the shortened Joe, doesn't mean that he doesn't have a clear directive to attack guns wherever he possibly can. He believes that quote unquote assault weapons should be illegal and should be confiscated. Now, that being said, Joe can't define what assault weapons are. He doesn't even know what definitions are anymore. The man has lost his mind. But he is still going after guns, or his handlers are going after guns, or whatever that may be. And so these states are passing laws to prevent that federal overreach. The administration has these aims, but they face, of course, a Republican Senate that doesn't look, I shouldn't say a Republican Senate, a 50-50 split in the Senate, and a bunch of Republicans who are not in favor of further restricting gun rights right now, because they know that if they do, they will never get back in office. They will be removed forever if they go against gun rights. It's one of the last bastions that their constituents are holding on to their patience with them for. It's just the preservation of gun rights for many of these people. But that being said, they don't face prospects in the Senate to get this overturned. So we're looking at simply increased federal regulation by reinterpreting existing laws through the ATF. That being said, these states are saying, no. Nope. Well, now the federal government is fighting against them, and that fight is about to heat up in Missouri. So let's talk about all of this, why it's going on, what it means, what the extents of these laws' powers are. I'm Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. I'm a lawyer. I'm also a legal and political commentator on YouTube and on Odyssey. Wherever you're watching, hit like, hit subscribe, hit those notifications. Make sure you don't miss any videos. Okay, so here's the genesis of this sort of story. This has been developing over the past couple days. This is why Missouri is fighting federal gun rules, and Missouri has passed a new law which would subject law enforcement agencies with officers who knowingly enforce federal gun laws to a fine of about $50,000 per violating officer, which sounds very, very scary. Now, the Department of Justice has sent an angry letter, because that's what they do, to Missouri to clarify their intentions with the law, and Missouri has actually sent a complete FU back to the DOJ, along with a constitutional history lesson right in the letter. It's a big time insult, and it's it's a huge middle finger to the DOJ, and the DOJ deserves every middle finger it gets, by the way. Let's just be clear on that. They deserve all of it. The DOJ is a pile of garbage, and Missouri is telling them so, at least with regards to federal gun laws. All right, Missouri is clashing with the U.S. Department of Justice over a new law banning police from enforcing federal gun rules. In a letter obtained by the Associated Press, Justice Department officials wrote that state lawmakers went too far with the law and noted that federal law trumps state law under the U.S. Constitution's Supremacy Clause. Now, what is this? Let's take a brief moment. The Supremacy Clause is a clause in the Constitution that says where federal law conflicts with state law, federal law wins. But there's a lot of questions about supremacy and how it actually functions. Where federal law conflicts with state law and they're irreconcilable, yes, federal law wins. But laws are not always in conflict, and laws' conflicts are not always irreconcilable. So that doesn't automatically mean that if a law has some sort of contradiction at the state level to a federal law, that the federal law is automatically going to win out. They have to first show the conflict, then they have to show that the federal government should win in this area because the laws are irreconcilable. Again, this becomes a very complicated process, and I'm simplifying it down, but this is the issue here. Right now, we don't have federal law conflicting with state law in Missouri. As this article will explain, we'll probably get there in a minute. There isn't actually a conflict between federal and Missouri laws, particularly because Missouri laws are largely copied from federal laws in regards to guns. And the reason that you'll find consistent laws between state and federal is because of the supremacy clause. That's why you're going to find a level of consistency. They're not actually concerned so much with conflicting with existing federal law. Missouri is on board with the existing federal law. What they are concerned about is reinterpretations and new regulations that change the federal law as it is to conflict with Missouri's understanding of those federal laws in the near future. These sort of regulatory schemes that come up, oh, we're gonna regulate this item out or that item out, or we're gonna find some way to regulate out and therefore make illegal some other firearm that isn't currently illegal, or we're going to find some new way to impose restrictions on firearms in the future that Missouri has not already adopted. They're saying no more. This is the limit of the Second Amendment. Now, when that happens, they still have to show a conflict between these laws. Just because Missouri has different laws than the federal government doesn't bring those laws directly into conflict. And Missouri has no obligation to enforce federal law. That's the federal government's job, and the federal government has law enforcement agencies that do that. So this sort of blanket idea that Missouri can't have this law and that the federal law will always win isn't actually correct. Depends on the purposes behind Missouri's law. And we're going to get to those in just a minute. In response, Governor Mike Parson and Attorney General Eric Schmidt wrote a defiant letter stating they still plan to enforce the new law. Missouri's new law would subject law enforcement agencies with officers who knowingly enforce federal gun laws to a fine of about $50,000 per violating officer. Now, of course, they cannot subject federal law enforcement agencies to this fine. The feds will win on this. If they tried to go after ATF or the FBI or DEA or whatever on enforcing federal gun laws, they're going to lose on that enforcement. The states can't impose fines and taxes upon the federal government, especially not for the enforcement of federal law. But what they can do is impose these fines on state agencies who do enforce those federal laws or who help facilitate the enforcement of those laws. How this typically works out is that when a state agent who is acting on behalf of the state encounters something that may be some sort of federal crime, they will refer it to a federal agency, and the federal agents will then come in and take over maybe the prosecution of that federal portion of the crime. They're saying in regards to federal gun laws, no, can't do this anymore. You're going to enforce only state of Missouri laws by state and local law enforcement. So that's what's going on here. The law also declares that any federal laws, executive orders, or other federal regulations to track or take away firearms from law-abiding citizens will be considered void in Missouri. And currently, this is not part of the legal schema. But this is what I was talking about earlier. They're trying to head off the upcoming encroachments that they see are coming. It's because Biden has talked about this. So let's go ahead and this article and the letter will be down in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. Let's check out two basic spots on this letter, and then we'll wrap up this video. Here's their opening response, and I find this to be great. I really do. This is a great letter. The whole thing is awesome. You should read it. It's about 7 pages, so we're not going to read all of it. But it says, "Dear Mr. Boynton, the right to keep and bear arms is essential to the preservation of liberty." Citing McDonald versus City of Chicago, Justice Thomas's concurring opinion. "Missouri provides the nation's highest level of protection for the right to keep and bear arms. See the Missouri Constitution, Article 1, Section 23. Recently, Missouri enhanced this protection through the Second Amendment Preservation Act. Your letter purporting to ask for clarification of this important legislation, which was purposefully leaked to the news media, is riddled with a misunderstanding of the law and falsehoods. We will not stand by while the federal government tries to tell Missourians how to live our lives. Missouri is not attempting to nullify federal law. Instead, Missouri is defending its people from federal government overreach by prohibiting state and local law enforcement agencies from being used by the federal government to infringe Missourians' rights to keep and bear arms. We must remind you that our liberty is safeguarded both by the right to keep and bear arms and by the power preserved to the state of Missouri under the 10th Amendment and basic principles of federalism. The rights protected by the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment are woven into the fabric of our country. They then go on for the next 6 pages to issue a constitutional law history lesson to the Department of Justice, who I think forgets that the Constitution exists. We're going to pick it up right at the end and get their concluding sort of sections here, because I think the concluding section puts the nail in it very well. So subsection 3, Missouri will defend its citizen and its laws from federal government overreach. In an interview with Anderson Cooper in August 2019, then candidate Biden confirmed his desire to confiscate guns. Cooper says, so to gun owners out there who say, well, a Biden administration means they're going to come for my guns. Biden says, bingo, you're right. If you have an assault weapon, fact of the matter is that should be illegal, period. Where's my oatmeal? Your letter of June 16th, 2021 provides no confidence that the Biden administration has retreated from this radical anti-gun position. Indeed, your letter explicitly endorses the view the federal laws authorizing the confiscation of firearms from law-abiding gun owners would be constitutional and valid. We do not share your radical view that federal law may effectively cancel out the fundamental liberty equally guaranteed by the Second Amendment and the Missouri Constitution. The Second Amendment Preservation Act protects Missourians from such attempts to violate the right to keep and bear arms. Missouri's Constitution requires the state of Missouri to uphold the right to keep and bear arms and under no circumstances decline to protect against their infringement. That's from the Missouri Constitution. We will carry out our constitutional duty to defend Missourians' right to keep and bear arms and the Second Amendment Preservation Act. We will fight tooth and nail to defend the right to keep and bear arms protected by the Second Amendment, Article 1, Section 23 of the Missouri Constitution, and the Second Amendment Preservation Act, and we will not tolerate any attempt by the federal government to deprive Missourians of this critical civil right. Again, a fantastic letter. A fantastic middle finger to the Department of Justice and the upcoming overreach of the feds on guns. It's been a long time coming. Obama wasn't able to get it done. Biden is looking to do so. We know this, and if they get the House and Senate, you can kiss the rights to keep and bear arms goodbye effectively for the near future until the Supreme Court actually eventually pulls its robes out of its butt crack and gets to work defending our liberty. But until then, it's up to individual states to guard against this upcoming government encroachment. Missouri is doing it. Arizona is doing it. Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia is doing it as well. Also, Arkansas, Idaho, Montana, and Oklahoma. These are all states that have passed some sort of Second Amendment sanctuary statute. And of course, they are being misconstrued by the media, misconstrued by the Department of Justice. And both of those guys deserve every middle finger they can get. That's my opinion. Tell me what you think down in the description below, or in the comments below. Not in the description. That's on me. Until next time. Peace. Peace.